You are listening to the Ranges Podcast.
Coming back from Europe in 2022, I remember the mood being it was just a lot of tension.
Yeah, I remember feeling totally exhausted. But then that was as far as we had planned out, right?
Yeah, I guess we didn't know what we were going to do once we got home.
Upon returning from tour, Joey made his exodus, and then that was the point where it was back to the original three of us, which is how we started the band 10 years ago. And I think just assuming it would go back to a studio project is
definitely
what I thought.
For sure.
And was fine with.
Yeah, I mean, it was what it was, and just kind of chilled for a while, kind of regrouped, and I guess it was just, let's write a new album.
Well, yeah, we had, part of the kind of behind the scenes of the Ranges album releases and everything, there is kind of a through line and a theme and it's planned out a certain ways in the future. So we had ideas for what the themes of the album would be and how they correlated with past albums. And that idea of the 33 had been floating around. We've used that number in all of our special editions and working that into the art in symbolic ways. So we thought really going all in on that concept. And originally it was going to be similar to the Night and Day album, where it was just going to be one 33-minute song.
Right.
And that was where the idea started, which you had kind of written that album,
I started to kind of flesh it out a bit, but it was proving difficult. And to going from writing music more as a band in a room, it went to just me putting ideas down and building layers out and coming up with simple drum ideas to pass to you to then
I think that's
about
how you approached me with it, because after Joey left and we did take a break and we didn't really do anything, you came back to me and said you started working on something, and you basically asked me, you're cool with continuing to do this? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And
yeah, right.
I said that, if we went back to being just a studio project, so be it. And if opportunities come up for us to play live, then we'll figure it out. But for now, without anything, pending as far as live obligations, we just figured we would record the record and see what happened.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So started writing songs, and they just kind of came out pretty quick. From what I recall, it was a pretty quick writing process of gathering the ideas and recording demos. And I don't remember when we started. I feel like I started sending you guys songs at the end of 2022.
Yeah, and I think we realized kind of early on that the 133-minute song wasn't there wasn't enough dynamics within that it would get kind of boring.
Right.
Through a lot of conversations, made more sense to do 33 minutes of music, just split into different songs.
Yeah.
And then talking about that theme of 33 and the duality aspect of that, if we're doing the duality thing, it makes sense to make it a double LP.
Right.
So you just cranked out 33 more minutes of music. So it ended up being 2 LPs, 33 minutes of music on each. And then the artwork split up the first LP into 30 quote-unquote songs.
Right.
Named the sections as songs. And the second one had 3 songs. So it's really went super all in on the numerology on this one.
Yeah. Yeah, and the first 6 songs on the first LP were more, straightforward, to the point. Whereas the second LP the idea was just to space it out more, add more ambience, make the songs longer, and just do the 3 songs on the second LP.
Yeah, I think every instance where we could work in that duality or the opposites type of thing, we took advantage of.
Right, as we do. Recording went extremely smooth. Just kind of banged it out.
In your studio?
Yeah, I don't remember any. That was probably the smoothest it's ever gone. It just kind of worked. I don't know what you, Mark, felt as the drummer guy?
That it was easier to work with you and come in and attack a song at a time. Rather than have everything worked out and having to, do it in a few days, a week, whatever. Just
right.
Take, a little bit more time. And
because that really was the approach, is I had recorded almost everything, and then you would just come in on a day and work all day on a song until it was done. And because you're so good with the click, like, I didn't really have to go back and re-record anything. It just lined up nicely, and I went back and redid a few things as I heard them differently, but for the most part, it was totally recording backwards instead of going drums to
right.
Guitars. It was the other way around, which, it worked. And I think we came out of the whole thing just really pleased with what it was.
Well, yeah, you're right. Usually it is the foundation of the drums first and everything gets layered on top of it, but because of, the technology that we have these days, that's not necessary. And like you said, as long as everything can be done to a click track, it really doesn't matter when you put it down. So it was good to be able to play along to the music rather than have to memorize everything and just play along to a click, or have just scratch tracks, which aren't necessary anymore, thanks to modern technology.
Yeah, the modern technology too, allowing a lot more synths and textures, and I think all those elements really made it a different sounding record than previous records, which I was very excited to hear that there was still still plenty of room for evolution and progression, as we've seen along the last 10 years worth of albums.
Right. And Joey had usually done all the synths and pianos and stuff, and it's funny, like, in going back and redoing Absaroka and remixing that, and like, we were doing pianos and everything from the beginning. It's always been part of what we'd done, and Joey stepped in and kind of took that over. And then when he left, it's like, okay, well, I got to figure this out. And so just building a better palette of tools to make those sounds, and just letting that kind of influence where the song was going to go was really a lot of fun. Versus starting with a guitar. A lot of it was just started with synths and pads and different types of textures. That then I heard a drum line, and then I heard guitars, and it was cool how it evolved.
And that progressive move over the years of trying to keep it super minimal into not being afraid to go maximal, or add in as many layers as needed to make the song what it needs to be.
Yep.
So, it's pretty standard process we do, where we kind of come up with a concept, you start writing music, I'll start coming up with art ideas for that concept, and once the songs get to a certain point and have their working titles, once we have the songs done, kind of come in and I'll suggest song names and kind of go back and forth and see what sounds the best, rename the songs in that way, kind of determine a track list from there, and then work that in with the artwork. Is kind of my approach on that for how I engage with the music aspect of it.
Finishing recording, finishing the artwork, and then submitting all of that to Dunk. There's always a moment of, I hope Dunk likes it. I hope Dunk wants to put it out again. Because I never want to just assume that Dunk's going to be on board, because we've thrown them so many strange curveballs with releases in the past.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, here it is. Here's what we want to do with it. And it was cool to Artur, who was working for the label, to hear him come back with hearing the first song off the album. And as soon as that bass kicked in, it's like, oh, yep, this is it. And it's like, yes.
Yeah.
Cool, we did it. So, that's always reassuring, because I was super happy with it and proud of what we'd done. But, when other people approve of it and validate
validation,
it, it's like, all right, cool. So, and then Federico jumped in on Dunk Records and kind of took over. There were hiccups along the process, but it all went well, and the final product came out perfect. And
it came out exceptionally well.
Yeah.
I think I'm very happy with how the whole package came together as sort of a synthesis.
Right. We were supposed to release it on November 3rd. That was the goal.
Because there were all the very symbolic, numerological, because 11, 3 times 11 is 33.
Right.
And that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
And so we moved it back, and the next one that made numerological sense was 12-12.
Right.
because you add the 1 and the 2s to get the 3s, and I don't know who's picking up on this kind of stuff. But I need it to be able to sleep at night.
It feels wrong to not do it that way at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not really doing everything ourselves, not having to conform to the Tuesday release or the Friday release or whatever the industry standards are for anything, really.
Before Thanksgiving. You're never supposed to release a record after Thanksgiving unless you're putting out a holiday record, and we did not have
Which it was.
that. What? Well, I didn't know that
you
33 was a...
He's the reason for the season.
Okay.
And it was crucified at age 33.
So
I can send you guys some links.
All my fears were misguided. I should have
33
known
is
we were
our-
releasing a holiday record.
Yeah.
33 is our Christmas album.
Christmas album,
Officially.
Good.
Hear those subtle jingle bells in the back.
Yep. I overdubbed them.
That's good though. Now I feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all works. It all worked out perfectly. But it was a great response too, which was also reaffirming in that. I mean, it happened with Cardinal Winds, which we recorded during COVID, where you couldn't go out and do anything.
Yeah.
And you wrote this album and released it not knowing if anybody was still listening.
Right.
And they were, and that got a great response. But it seems like it's always that process. You go like into the studio and write this thing and have no idea if people are still paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
But I think they are.
yeah, the morning of pre-orders. I mean, it's fun that we have our own record label too. So we get to put the music out ourselves and handle all the logistics of releasing it in the U.S. So the morning of pre-orders is always like, oh, we got to make sure everything's in line, everything works, and then it just goes live, and you just kind of sit and watch, and it's always nerve-wracking. Just thinking like, yeah, it's not going to work this time, and then it takes off, and people buy the thing, and you sell a bunch, and you recoup your investment, and it's like, all right, cool, we did it.
Yeah, especially when it did go out and we made some year-end lists with about 3 weeks to spare.
Right.
Which is why you don't release it after Thanksgiving, because you miss all those lists and people had already made their lists and upset they had to make an addendum or a new list or
Right.
But yeah, that was kind of, again, that was as far as we thought with that too, because it wasn't really intended to be a live performance with these. It was just write the album. We're a studio band. You know, we could do a lot with the video, with the art, that kind of content.
Yeah. And that was the thing with writing the songs, with the guitar parts, because it was just like lay down a rhythm part and then add a second rhythm part and then add a lead and add another lead, and just like layering up all these guitars without even considering what part am I actually going to play live if we play live.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are we going to make that work? It was all just layers of guitars, and so totally not thinking about ever playing it live. I don't think that was on our radar.
Well, we weren't going to worry about it, yeah.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, subscribe to The Range's Patreon to hear more episodes.